Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Inept General bringing you another Total War Warhammer Legendary Lord lore video, and today we are doing Repanse de Lyonesse, the new Legendary Lord for Bretonnia. Now, if you guys have already seen my Missing Legendary Lords for Bretonnia video, a lot of the audio from that is used to make this video, so do feel free to give this a miss if you've already seen that one, but if you haven't, please do sit back and enjoy as we discuss Repanse de Lyonesse. Repanse was a young girl growing up in the Dukedom of Lyonesse in the northern part of Bretonnia. She was a peasant girl, just a shepherdess working the hills and taking her flock around the local villages and pastures, and that was her life. She led a relatively simple and productive life as a peasant of Bretonnia. But then in the year of the imperial calendar, 2007, there was a chaos invasion. So chaos invades Couronne from the north and manages to kill the king at the time, Louis the Brave, and proceeds to siege Couronne and march southwards to the rest of northern Bretonnia. Eventually the Chaos forces got to Lyonesse and started again burning and pillaging and rampaging around the whole of Lyonesse. They eventually came along Repanse's village in Lyonesse, and they started to set the town ablaze, slaughtering everyone they could find. There was a smattering of knights protecting the village, but they seemed to be sort of retreating or had been cut down or maybe running away to regroup somewhere else to maybe have a counter-strike against the Chaos forces. As she was fleeing this chaos, Repanse stumbled across a little body of water, a small lake if you will, and the Lady of the Lake herself appeared to Repanse. Now Repanse had always been a devout and zealot believer in the Lady, and really held her religious convictions to heart. And so the Lady of the Lake appeared to her and said, Repanse, Repanse, rid my land of these foul foes, for they offend me with their presence, and gave Repanse her blessing. And Repanse, inspired and given a vision by the lady, ran to the local village to try and fight off the foes herself, in maybe a fit of madness, one could argue. But she arrived at the village and found the slain body of a knight, and she took off the knight's armor and put it on herself. One must imagine he must have been a fairly slight knight for a 17-year-old girl to manage to fit into his armor, but she did. And then she rushed to the Grail Chapel. She'd been sort of spurned on to go to the Grail Chapel by the lady herself, who'd granted her a vision of it. So she goes to the Grail Chapel, breaks open the Grail Reliquary, takes the sword that's in there, rips a tapestry off the wall that has the image of the lady. It's been preserved, it's many hundreds of years old, but looks as new as the day it came off the loom because it had the lady's blessing. And she tied the ends of it to a lance that she found, got on a loose horse, and started to charge at the Chaos invaders within her village. And she started to hack and slash at them, and the knights who were around the village caught sight of this, and those who were retreating were refused to be sort of shown up by this young girl who seemed to be fighting in their stead, and their honor got hold of them once more, and they charged in to aid her. Eventually they managed to fight off, joined in by the peasants of the village as well, they managed to fight off Chaos from the village. After this, Repanse was not done. She was like, I've been given a holy mission from the Lady of the Lake. And they charged out of Lyonesse and gathered more and more knights to them who were inspired by Repanse, this young girl inspired by bravery and zealotry and obviously the blessing of the lady. So much so that it seemed to radiate off her in a wonderful glow. So she gathers more and more knights to her, and eventually she's able to ride out of Lyonesse and march to Couronne, the under siege capital of Bretonnia. So they get there, and Couronne is just on the verge of being taken. The last splinters on the main gate are starting to be sort of wrecked away. The ram is sort of pulling back for its last hit against the gate of Couronne for the Chaos forces to rush in and kill everybody. So the ram is pulling back and is about to swing down for its last strike against the gates of Couronne when a horn is heard over the horizon, and it's Repanse de Lyonesse and the knights of Lyonesse and all the knights she'd managed to gather to her on her march northwards to Couronne to fight off this Chaos hordes and protect the capital. They charge down the hill in a wonderful lance formation and smash the Chaos hordes to smithereens. Repanse herself is at the tip of the lance, and she manages to hack and slash her way through the Chaos hordes until she eventually comes upon the Chaos Lord himself. She rears up her horse, and a gleaming light seems to emanate from around her head in a kind of halo so bright and dazzling that it temporarily blinds the Chaos Lord, at which point Repanse slashes him and decapitates him with a single blow,
and the rest of the horde shatters.
Repanse
then marches out, frees Couronne. As I mentioned, the king of Couronne had been killed, and his son was a little bit too young to really take over all the responsibilities, and that's why he himself couldn't lead an effective counterattack. But he was crowned, and he was known as Louis the Young. And Louis the Young, as a teenager or toddler or whatever he was at the time, knights Repanse and gives her the dukedom of Lyonesse itself. She is now the Duchess of Lyonesse, but as I said, this was in the year of the imperial calendar 2007, so it's some 500 years before the start of the Total War Warhammer timeline. But exceptions have been made, and the Blessing of the Lady has been known to grant long life as well, so there's no real reason why they couldn't get her in the game. You may have already noticed, effectively, Repanse de Lyonesse is Joan of Arc in Bretonnia. That's who she is, but unlike Joan of Arc, they didn't burn her at the stake with gratitude, they instead rewarded her with a dukedom. So it's a bit of a happier ending to Joan of Arc for you there.
Repanse also had a merry band of men that would go on to be known as Les Chevaliers. These were the guys who joined her initially and would sort of marched into this battle with Chaos with her and would join her forces later in life as well. They consisted of peasants and knights alike. As far as the peasants, they were split into two main fighting groups, the Spearmen of Lyonesse and the Bowmen of Lyonesse. The spearmen were sort of highly trained spearmen as far as peasants went, and they were led by their champion René Descartes, and the bowmen were led by a chap known as Jean-Claude Satre, and the two of them would go on to lead this unit, making them a formidable fighting force within the armies of Lyonesse. As far as the knights were concerned, she had two main groups of knights known as the Chevaliers de la Damoiselle de Guerre, which were a unit of knight-errant, kind of the younger knights within her ranks. And they were sort of young and reckless and full of vim and vigor. And they were fully dedicated to the lady. So the fact that this young fighting woman, Repanse, had the blessing of the lady meant they were happy to follow her into battle. They were led by a knight of the realm known as Pierre Dardenne, and their next regiment were known as the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. They were the regiment that would hold the banner of the Fleur-de-Lis into battle, her most elite fighting knights, as they would charge down the enemies of Repanse de Lyonesse. There were also two kind of handy lieutenants she had. One was known as Chantelle de la Nuit, and she was a Grail damsel doing the magic of the regiment of Repanse de Lyonesse, and the other one was Henry le Massif, the man who was a Grail knight who really specialized in killing large monsters, and he had two bits of gear on him, the Sword of Heroes, who is said when it was forged was quenched in manticore blood, and the Charmed Shield, which had a depiction of the lady giving a blessing to the knight on it, and it was said to be particularly good at resisting missile fire. So that was Repanse's merry band, known as Les Chevaliers.
In terms of her rules on the tabletop that might be transferred over, and what we could guess maybe some of her abilities would be in Total War Warhammer, is she does have this blessing of the lady that grants her this halo of light around her head that seems to be semi-permanent or just appears when she's in trouble. And this essentially grants her fear-causing effects on any of her enemies, because obviously if you had this sort of enlightened angel charging at you, you'd probably be a bit freaked out. So she causes fear. In terms of her gear, she has the Fleur-de-Lis banner, which is essentially the sign for the lady. And what the Fleur-de-Lis banner did on the tabletop was it effectively took away effects of Winds of Magic on a magic user. And in terms of her sword is the Sword of Lyon, and on the tabletop it worked like this. The Sword de Lyon, if you're in base-to-base contact with Repanse de Lyonesse, any of your magic items, except for your magic weapons, stopped working. So any magic ward-saved items, any magic armor, that would all cease to function. So that's really Repanse de Lyonesse, the Joan of Arc, kind of an anti-magic legendary lord potentially for Bretonnia.
A great addition for Bretonnia, and it's great to have her on the roster. I hope you enjoyed this tale of Repanse de Lyonesse. As always, guys, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright, guys? Bye.